How professional property managers select tenants. What if I told you that the difference between a landlord who builds genuine wealth through real estate and one who loses sleep every single night comes down to one single decision made before anyone ever moves in? Tenant selection. That is it. And most people get it completely wrong because they either rely on gut feeling or they follow a process so inconsistent that it practically invites disaster through the front door. Hello, I am Nelius, and today I am going to walk you through three real case study scenarios that show you exactly how professional property managers approach tenant selection. And I promise you, by the end of this video, you are going to see this entire process differently. We are talking about real situations, real decisions, and the specific frameworks that protect landlords from costly mistakes. So let's get into it. Before we dive into the case studies, let me quickly set the stage because understanding why tenant selection matters so deeply is what makes these stories hit differently. A bad tenant is not just an inconvenience. We are talking about missed rent payments that can stack up for months before you can legally remove someone. We are talking about property damage that goes far beyond the security deposit. We are talking about legal headaches, stress, and sometimes tens of thousands of dollars in losses. Professional property managers have seen all of this, and that is exactly why they have developed systematic, thorough, and legally compliant screening processes that take the emotion completely out of the equation. They replace gut feeling with criteria, they replace hope with verification, and the results speak for themselves. All right, let's get into case study number one. Case study one: the applicant with the perfect story. Imagine a property management company receives an application for a well maintained three-bedroom single family home in a suburban neighborhood. The applicant, let's call him Marcus, presents himself extremely well during the initial inquiry. He is articulate, professionally dressed when he comes to view the property, responsive to all communication, and he has a compelling personal story. He recently relocated for a new job opportunity, he explains, and he is eager to settle his family into the community. He even offers to pay 3 months of rent up front to secure the unit. On the surface, Marcus seems like a dream tenant. Now, here is where the professional property manager diverges entirely from what an inexperienced landlord would do. An inexperienced landlord hears that story, feels good about Marcus, and hands over the keys. A professional property manager hears that story and begins the verification process without prejudice in either direction. The feeling does not matter. The verification does. The property management company pulls Marcus's credit report through an authorized tenant screening service. What they find is interesting. His credit score sits in a moderate range, which is not necessarily a deal breaker, but the details tell a more complex story. There are two collections from previous rental properties listed in the last 4 years. Not utility bills, not medical debt, but rental related collections. That is a red flag that gets flagged immediately. Next, the property manager contacts the references Marcus provided as previous landlords. The first landlord listed is a phone number that, when called, sounds suspiciously like someone answering on behalf of a business that does not quite exist. The property manager does something that many beginners do not even think to do. They cross reference the address Marcus listed as his previous rental against public property records to identify the actual owner of that property. The number Marcus provided does not match. When the actual property owner is tracked down and contacted, the story begins to unravel. Marcus had left that property owing 2 months of rent and had done so without proper notice. The income verification stage adds another layer. Marcus claims to be employed by a company in the city and provides a pay stub. The property manager calls the company directly using a number found through independent research, not the number Marcus provided, and speaks with human resources. The position Marcus described does not align with the pay structure shown on the stub. The decision is made to decline the application. A professionally worded adverse action notice is sent, citing the rental history and income verification discrepancies. Marcus's upfront offer of 3 months of rent had actually heightened suspicion rather than reduced it, because professional property managers know that unusual offers like that sometimes signal an applicant who knows they cannot pass standard screening and is trying to bypass it with cash. What this case study teaches us is that the story an applicant tells, no matter how polished, is completely secondary to what the documentation and independent verification reveal. Professional property managers do not screen based on first impressions. They screen based on a consistent, documented, and legally sound process applied equally to every single applicant. Now let me show you something completely different in case study 2, because this next situation is one that surprises a lot of people. Case study 2, the applicant who did not look great on paper. This one challenges some assumptions. A property management firm receives an application for a two-bedroom apartment from a woman. Let's call her Diana, who is a recent graduate entering the workforce for the first time. She does not have a long rental history. Her credit file is thin, meaning there is not much history there at all, rather than negative history. Her income, while meeting the basic ratio requirements, is right at the lower end of what the property requires. On paper, Diana does not pop. An inexperienced landlord might look at that application and move on to the next one without a second thought. But a professional property manager understands that thin credit and limited rental history are not the same thing as bad credit and problematic rental history. The absence of negative information is very different from the presence of negative information, and this distinction matters both from a fairness standpoint and from a fair housing compliance standpoint. Here is what the professional screening process reveals. Diana's credit file is thin but completely clean. No missed payments on the accounts she does have, no collections, no judgments. Her current employer confirms her employment and salary, which meets the income to rent ratio criteria the company applies to every applicant. She provides a reference from a professor she rented a room from during her final year of school, and when contacted, that reference is glowing. She is described as responsible, communicative, and someone who always flagged maintenance issues early rather than letting them become bigger problems. The property management company uses a co-signer policy that is applied consistently to any applicant whose rental history does not fully meet the standard criteria. Diana is asked if she has a qualified co-signer, and she does. Her parent meets the income and credit requirements and agrees to co-sign the lease. This is documented clearly. The co-signer agreement is incorporated into the lease legally, and everyone understands their obligations. Diana moves in. 12 months later, she is one of the most reliable tenants in the portfolio. Rent on time every single month. One minor maintenance request handled professionally. Renewed her lease for a second year. The property manager flagged her at renewal as a preferred tenant. What this case study illustrates is that professional property managers are not just looking to eliminate risk, they are looking to accurately assess risk. There is a significant difference. Blanket rejection of applicants based on thin files or limited history, without examining what that history actually shows, can lead to missed opportunities for good tenants, and in some cases can create fair housing exposure if such policies are not applied consistently. Professional property managers know how to look past surface level impressions in both directions, whether an applicant looks too good or not polished enough at first glance. This brings me to the third case study, and honestly, this one is the most instructive for anyone who owns rental property or is thinking about getting into it. Case study 3, the multiple applicant scenario. This is where the professionalism of a great property management process really shines. A highly desirable rental property in an urban area, nicely renovated, great location, priced competitively, generates 7 applications within the first week of being listed. Now the property manager has to navigate something that trips up a lot of landlords, choosing between multiple applicants in a way that is legally compliant, financially sound, and completely defensible. First, the property management company make sure that every single application is processed using the exact same criteria in the exact same order. This is not just good practice, it is essential from a fair housing compliance standpoint. You cannot apply stricter scrutiny to one applicant than another based on anything other than objective criteria, so the company works through a qualification checklist that every applicant goes through identically. Of the 7 applicants, 2 do not meet the income requirement after verification. 2 others have rental history issues, one with a prior eviction on record, and one with multiple late payment entries from a previous landlord who was actually willing to speak candidly when contacted. That leaves 3 applicants who all meet the baseline qualification criteria. Now, here is where professional property managers handle things differently than most people expect. When multiple qualified applicants exist, the selection is typically made based on the order of completed applications, meaning the first fully qualified and fully verified application gets the offer. This is called a first come, first qualified approach, and it is used deliberately. because it removes the possibility of any subjective comparison between equally qualified candidates that could create fair housing problems. The first of those three qualified applicants, let's call her Priya, submitted a complete application with all required documentation, had excellent credit, verified income significantly above the requirement, and had one previous landlord who could not be reached. In the absence of a negative reference rather than a confirmed positive one, the property manager notes this, but observes that the credit history shows consistent on time payments across several years, which provides its own form of payment behavior evidence. Priya gets the offer, but the process does not stop there. The property manager does something that many landlords overlook entirely. They send proper communication to every declined applicant in a timely manner. The applicants who did not meet criteria receive adverse action notices that are factually accurate and legally compliant, explaining the basis for the decision without sharing information that should be kept private. This protects the property management company from disputes and demonstrates the kind of professionalism that the entire process is built on. The lease is signed with Priya. The move-in inspection is documented thoroughly with photographs and a written checklist signed by both parties, and the stage is set for a tenancy built on clear expectations from day one. What this case study teaches us is that professional tenant selection is not just about who gets in. It is about the entire system being consistent, documented, equitable, and repeatable. The moment you start making exceptions or comparing applicants in ways that are not grounded in objective criteria, you open yourself up to problems that go far beyond a bad tenant. Now, let me pull back and show you the common threads running through all three of these case studies, because this is where the real learning lives. Every single professional property manager we just observed followed the same foundational principles. They established written criteria before marketing the property. They applied those criteria identically to every applicant. They verified independently rather than trusting self-reported information. They understood the difference between absence of information and presence of negative information. They knew how to use tools like co-signer agreements to expand the qualified applicant pool without increasing risk. They documented everything, and they handled every communication, approvals and declines alike with professionalism and legal awareness. These are not complicated concepts, but they require discipline, consistency, and a genuine understanding of both the business side and the legal side of property management. And that is exactly where most individual landlords struggle, because they are operating without a system. Here is something I want you to think about. If you are a property owner or aspiring investor, the knowledge that professional property managers carry is not secret. It is learnable, it is systematic, and when you have access to the right frameworks, the right criteria templates, the right screening processes, and the right understanding of fair housing compliance, you can select tenants with the same precision and confidence that the professionals use every single day. This is exactly why I built a course platform, Effective Property Management, of which the membership program you will find linked in the description below. Inside, we go deep on every aspect of professional property management, from tenant selection and lease structuring to maintenance coordination and everything in between. You get access to training, templates, and a community of investors and managers who are all working toward the same goal, managing real estate like true professionals. Whether you are just getting started or you have been at this for years and you know there are gaps in your system, this membership is built for you. Check out the link in the description and see if it is the right fit for where you want to take your real estate journey. Now, before I wrap this video up, I want to give you one more insight that ties all three case studies together, and it is something that most people in this space do not talk about enough. Tenant selection is not just a financial decision, it is a relationship decision. The tenants who move into your property are going to live there, interact with your maintenance team, and shape the condition of your asset. Professional property managers know that the goal of screening is not to find the perfect applicant in some abstract sense. It is to find the applicant who meets the established criteria and is most likely to fulfill the lease obligations. When you frame it that way, the entire process becomes less about judgment and more about matching. Matching criteria to evidence, matching expectations to documentation, matching the right tenant to the right property using a process you can trust. Marcus did not make it past screening because the evidence contradicted the story. Diana made it through because the evidence, while limited, was clean and supplemented by a co-signer policy applied consistently. Priya got the keys because she was first in the queue of qualified applicants in a fair, objective, and fully documented process. Three different outcomes, one consistent process. That is what professional property management looks like in practice. If this video helped you see tenant selection differently, I want you to hit that like button because it genuinely helps this content reach more landlords and investors who need it. And if you are not subscribed yet, now is a great time because we cover the full spectrum of property management strategy on this channel. Drop a comment below and tell me which of the three case studies resonated most with you, and let me know if there are specific situations you want me to dig into in future videos. I read every single comment. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.